Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the second virtual quarterly board meeting for the Albany Pine Bush Preserve Commission. Typically at this time I go around the table and introduce everybody. So I guess we'll go around the virtual table. I see that Supervisor Paul Mahan and Mike Tangler are here representing Town of Colony.
All right.
Good morning. I see Peter Barber, Supervisor of Town of Gitlin, is on.
Good morning.
Good morning. I see Jessica Otney Mahar from TNC is on. Good morning, Jessica. John Brust, I see John Brust, Citizen Rep. Nancy Pearson, Citizen Rep.
Hello.
Hello, Nancy. Harvey Alexander, Citizen Rep.
Hello.
Hello, Harvey. Steve Rice, I think I saw you. Yeah, you're on. Hi, Steve. Representing New York State OPRHP is Janet Zuckerman.
Morning.
Good morning, Janet. And representing the City of Albany is Brad Glass. I saw Brad sign on as well. Good morning, Brad. And of course, last but not least is our Executive Director, Chris Hauver. And so good morning, everybody. The first order of business is to consider the minutes of the last quarterly board meeting. Can I have a motion to consider those minutes?
I will. Brust here.
Thanks, John.
I'll second.
Thank you, Nancy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, now we open it up to the comments from the public. I believe I saw Mr. Naylor.
Yep, Richard's there.
I'm here somewhere.
There you are.
Did you have anything you want to say?
I do,
Richard?
thank you. Good morning, everybody. I haven't seen you for a while, but I wanted to let you know that the Friends are still busy doing what we can do in the background. The Cultural Resources GIS project that Joel could tell you more about than I can, because he was mainly working on it for the staff. But we've paid $2,500 of the 50%, and it's moving along. It'll be a new GIS layer, which will give cultural areas, roads, anything that is cultural or historical, something that the staff might need to see, or even the public might want to know about. When they're planning, they can overlay everything with that and see that they don't just burn down the new cemetery, or that's maybe a little radical, but you see what I mean. Everything can be taken into consideration using that layer. So that's moving along. Secondly, we kind of got an emergency request from staff for video equipment to do programming since they couldn't do anything in the building live in the field. So they can be out on one of the paths and do a program for people. This involves camera and Verizon and a lot of little equipment to make that work. So we were excited to do that, and we came up with a form to use in the future for such requests so that it goes very quickly. We're trying to think of all the questions that we might have that would help us say, yes, we should do that. Thirdly, we're doing programming. We've had 3 monthly Zoom sessions for the public and the volunteers and the Friends. They've been 3 on Antarctica, Africa, and Iceland. We are doing a trivia hour this next month, and a book discussion on a nature subject for the next time, and looking forward to more of those. We're kind of experimenting to see how things go and working on building up an audience. So just wanted to thank you for what you're doing, let you know that we're still here, available to do whatever we can, and working with other Friends.
What kind of an audience have you been getting?
We've had between 15 and 30, so it really depends. It's kind of new. We're also co-sponsoring the science lectures, and they've been in the neighborhood of 13 to 30. I think one got 50. We have one tonight, so we'll see how that goes. but we're really happy to be able to keep these things going and not let people forget that all this work is still ongoing with scientists.
Richard, you have Beverly Bartiquez is speaking on Tuesday, isn't she, for you?
That's true. We're doing another program this month, has to do with Rapp Road, and I think she'll touch on the northern migration. I don't know if she'll talk about anything going on with cross gates and that kind of thing, but I'm sure that's very strongly on their minds.
You know, I'll make sure after the meeting today or tomorrow morning, I'll send all the board members and the reps a link to that webinar for Beverly Bartiquez for her talk.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you.
do that.
Just let me say hi to Paula also. It's like I'm
Hi, Richard.
good to see
It's
you.
great to hear your voice.
It's been a long time.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, anything else, Richard?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't think we have anybody else from the public on, at least I don't see anybody.
Anybody
But
there,
if there
Wendy?
is if there's anybody else, certainly speak up now if you so desire.
No, Wendy just went through the list. There's just our staff.
Okay, so we'll move on to reports. The only thing I was going to bring up to the board was the status of the Part 182 permit that the Pine Bush applied for general maintenance around the visitor center. This permit was initially submitted in 2017 and it still has not been issued. We believe that the timing of this will probably be issued likely around mid-November. So that's the update on that. And I didn't know, Chris, if you or Neil knew that, but that's about the status of that permit.
I mean, I can ask Neil to touch base on it on when he does his report for the technical committee. Wants to add more, but in summary, 2017, Neil worked with staff to put together a habitat conservation plan, submitted to Fish and Wildlife Service, and it also has to get approved and provide a permit from DEC to allow us to do basically general maintenance work on the grounds of the Discovery Center because it's occupied with endangered species. So we actually had to go through the HCP process. And yes, we started in 2017.
So you'll be getting that permit in the near future, hopefully. Okay, that's all I have to report. Does any of the board members have anything they'd like to report to the group? Okay, the floor is yours, Chris.
Okay. I probably won't touch on much in the update, so I'd ask you to make sure that you take a look at that so you can see all the things that the staff have been doing this last quarter. Field staff, science staff, and stewardship staff have been out in the ground, taking care of things the way we usually do, but with much less support from seasonal staff because of our unknown funding situation. So we basically didn't hire any seasonal staff except for one this year, helping with the reopening of the Discovery Center. Yes. Oh, Mike's on? Okay, let him in. Sorry. I have my technical support persons over there, as you can see. So going back to that, we reopened our offices. I communicated this through email. We reopened offices and fieldwork June 22nd with a reopening plan. That was under phase 2 of the New York State guidelines. On the 27th of August, we reopened the Discovery Center. That was under phase 4. We are open limited hours, so we're open Thursday through Sunday, 4 days a week. And we've had a number of visitors that have come through that are all new. Vicky, our visitor services specialist, mentioned that yesterday, that a lot of the people that are coming into the center are new, and we think that they're seeing the sign on the road that says that we're reopened. We started programming again, but kind of in a different way. So basically what we're doing for the public are naturalist walks, and we do those. We're scheduled Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday to do those, and they're limited to a group of 10, and that includes our leaders, so groups of 9 people. But we've had good interest in that, so that's good too. I will just share another screen here with you. We closed on 2800 and 2810 Curry Road. We closed on this June 26th. We started the project back in June of 19. I'm sorry, September of 19. The board gave approval to move forward with this. So there's these 2 parcels, A and B. You can see A is adjacent to a piece of protected pine bush land. Currently, that's occupied with butterflies. So both these parcels that we just acquired are most likely occupied. We haven't been able to acquire lands that have butterflies on them in a long time. So this is it's a big win for us. It's a small project, basically 4.5 acres. Total project cost was $85,000. That's based on fair market value, but it's nice to add a little more. So for the record, we always say we have about 3,350 acres protected. Basically adding these, we're at 3,368 acres. So getting there towards that goal of 5,380. And I'll leave it at that. Anybody have any questions? I'll go back to the agenda for us.
Chris, do you have other acquisitions, larger acquisitions, that you're always tracking these things? How many of them and what kind of acreage are you tracking right now?
We have nothing in the pipeline right now that we're working on. I had a piece on Kings Road, and there's a note in front of me to call the owner from a conversation I had back in February. But I talked to him maybe 4 weeks ago, and he said, I don't really want to sell it. I think I might sell it. So that was about 34 acres.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there's nothing else on the market. Anything, and I shouldn't say that, anything that is on the market has been there for a long time with an asking price way, way above what I would consider fair market value. So we sit and wait. We'll get there.
In most of the communities that we're working in, the realtors are crazy busy right now. We're seeing school enrollments in our rural communities really going up as people are moving north. I wonder if, as people are bailing out of the city, I wonder if those acquisitions that you might be tracking or those properties that have been for sale for a long time are going to move given what's going on right now.
It might. I mean, there's one parcel that we've been looking at for a long time. It's got road frontage on Curry Road Extension and Kings Road. It's right by what we call the Barron's House, where that's our maintenance facility where we have the barns and the house for seasonal housing. This is a piece of property. It's flat, it's dry, it's perfect for a subdivision with 2 access points on roads. But no one even makes the move on it because the property owner continually has an asking price of $1 million and won't take, quote from him, anything less than $950. I can tell you that it might appraise at $400,000, more likely high 300s. So nobody even touches it, which is interesting. But I check in with him every once in a while and see if his prices come down. No. But it's nice to have the opportunity now, like that we can actually acquire land on our own.
Especially now, especially where we find ourselves with budgetary issues on the state level and things like that.
Yep. Any other questions for me? Does that answer your questions, John?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to the technical committee project review. Neil Gifford. Neil?
Is he there? There.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Can hear you now.
Right. Sorry, there's apparently a bit of a lag. Apologies for that. Here I am. Good morning, everyone. Happy fall. Brief report for the technical committee. Hopefully you have a copy of the project update number 58 that Patty and I put together. The list is relatively short, but the committee has been a little bit busier this quarter. I'll start with the City of Albany, the landfill restoration project, the mitigation project there continues to chug forward. We get weekly updates from the city's contractors. And at this point, they're basically holding steady with maintenance, invasive species, ecological monitoring. Nothing new is happening as far as additional restoration work, either on preserved lands around the landfill or on the landfill itself until probably next year as a result of the city's contractors and the city managing their COVID response. In the town of Guilderland, there's really only been one project this quarter that continues to take our attention, and that's the Rapp Road residential development sponsored by Pyramid Crossgates. There's been a bunch of information, a lot of information in the news on this one. Long story short, the applicant continues to work with the city and the town of Guilderland on looking at alternatives for dealing with managing traffic within the city of Albany on Rapp Road. The town of Guilderland has completed their secret environmental review process, most recently with adopting their findings from the EIS on August 26th, 2020. So the environmental review for the project is done, and now the project moves on to the town's site plan review process. If you have additional questions on that project, I'd be happy to try and answer them. And lastly, there are a number of projects in the town of Colony. A couple are basically redevelopments of non-protection areas that were noted on the report. Nothing new on the community solar project, other than the fact that we have heard through the grapevine that they continue to evaluate their options, and that project will likely occur at some point. An application will hopefully go to the town that we will then end up being able to review. And the last one is a conservation subdivision on Albany Street in full protection areas 35C and D, which have been a priority for acquisition and protection for a long time. And the applicant there is looking to put several small lots adjacent to the road frontage, protect a small piece of the property, and bulk of the site of over 100 acres is DEC wetland, so not regulated wetland, so nothing will likely happen in the rest of that property. In the short term, we did advocate pretty strongly that the applicant and the town work to try and protect more than the 10 acres of that more than 100 associated with that project. The project continues under review in the town of Colony. But that's it. So it's been slow, but picked up a little bit this quarter. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Oh, and hearing none. Chris, since you gave me the cue earlier regarding the HCP and Keith's question. Keith, I had a meeting last week with both the Region 4 permits and wildlife folks. Our federal HCP and federal incidental take permit went through a 30-day, was finally published in the Federal Register after 4 years. That had a 30-day public comment period that closed on Monday. And the service did not receive, I heard from the service this morning, they did not receive any substantive comments on that permit. So we anticipate by the end of the month having our federal permit from Fish and Wildlife. And the HCP the HCP itself, Habitat Conservation Plan, will serve as the necessary background work for the department's Part 182 permit to the commission. So consistent with what you said, we're hoping to wrap this up this fall. And once I get all the paperwork, the final paperwork into Mike Clark and Angelica, we should be ready to roll.
You must be impressed with the lightning speed of which this permit is getting issued.
Indeed, yes.
Well, you know what?
I had a lot more hair when this project started.
I I think I would compliment the department on how quickly they've taken this and moved it through.
Yeah, they've been great.
Yes. The federal government's a little slower,
Yes.
but for multiple reasons. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, one of the people that, I don't know, why am I giving them the benefit, but really the main person that like runs this left, and then they brought in a new person. But when Neil and I met nearly 4 years ago with the service, we were assured that it would be a seamless, fairly quick process.
6-month process.
6 months. All right.
Okay,
Any questions?
any questions for Neil from anybody?
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Next with the financial report is Lisa Anthony.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, here we go. Statement of financial activities. This is through July 31st, which represents 4 months of our fiscal year. We'll start on the revenue side. Dues and contributions are $1,300 over budget, and this is due to Trusco, quarterly Trusco that came in. That's a little bit higher than budget. Government grants and contracts are at 88% of budget. This is related to our expenses below. This is due to conservative spending during this time, and especially at the beginning of the year. Mitigation fees are over budget by $10,000, and this is due to tonnage from the landfill. Lease revenue is on budget for the year, and other revenue is $9,000 under budget. And this has to do with program fees and merchandise sales, and this is due to the Discovery Center closure. Moving on to expenses, personnel and fringe. It is under budget, and this is due to our seasonal staff, again, to the closure and COVID-19. We will have a large payment in November for our retirement system, which will bring this close to budget. Travel and training are under budget, and this is due to the closure and COVID-19 as well, and this is across all departments. Contractual is a little bit under budget. This will catch up. Stewardship is beginning some contracts in the fall. Communications is under budget. Occupancy is under budget. These are due to the Lupin Fest. Communications is $17,000 under budget due to COVID-19, and most of these are. And community engagement also under budget. Occupancy is at 45% of budget, and this is due to savings on utilities and due to the closure of the Discovery Center. Supplies and equipment are under budget, 57% of budget. We probably will utilize this line though for the year due to PPE purchases for COVID-19. Other expenses are at 76% of budget, a little bit under budget due to marketing, promotion, and gift shop purchases due to the closure of the Discovery Center. Overall, both revenue and expenses came in under budget at 90% and 79%, giving us an operating income of $100,000 through July. Any questions on that? Okay. Moving on to the statement of net assets. Cash increased, and this is due to quarterly payments from DEC and Trusco. Grants receivable decreased slightly, and this is just a difference in the payment due in March of last year versus July of this year for DEC. Accounts receivable increased slightly. This is money owed for our internet and phone system by TNC. Inventory remained the same. Prepaid expenses are zero. This is due to the timing of year-end expenses in March versus prepaid expenses now, and that you'll see that every year. Investments, good news, had a gain of $655,000. We had a transfer to land of $85,000, giving us a net of $571,000 through July, which is fantastic. Capital assets decreased $88,000. This is due to depreciation expense through the month of July. Land increased $85,000 due to the purchase of 2800 and 2801 Perry Road. Deferred outflows remain the same. This is the reporting requirement for GASB 68 and 71. This will change in November as the reports from the retirement system come out and we make that large payment, which is estimated to be about $170,000 in November. So any questions on assets on that? Liabilities, accounts payable and accrued expenses decreased slightly. This is just due to expenses that being paid that were owed. Deferred revenue, the next three line items remain the same. Deferred revenue remain the same. This is money for National Grid and the colony mitigation. New York State pension liability remained the same. And again, this will change in November. And the OPEB liability remained the same. And I am currently working with Milliman to do our actuarial report for this year for the OPEB liability. So total liabilities decreased $6,200 due to accrued expenses being paid. On to net assets, capital assets and land decreased $3,000 due to the depreciation expense of $88,000 and the purchase of land of $85,000. Reserved assets remained the same and unreserved assets increased $671,000, giving us an increase of total net assets of $668,000. This is due to a gain in investments of $655,000, depreciation expense of $88,000, and a net income of $100,000. Any questions on that?
Could you give us sort of a brief synopsis of what has and will be affected by the pandemic in terms of our budget?
Yes, Chris and I are in the process of, I've done a first round contingency budget. And looking at that, our personnel will be affected by our seasonal salaries of about $150,000. Salaries from permanent staff will be affected by about $80,000 and our benefit rate associated with that. So we're looking at about $300,000 in personnel currently. Travel and training, we're looking at about $28,000 across all departments at this point. And this is all going to depend on the money we get from DEC and the answers we get from DEC for our funding for this year, which we have not received yet. So we're waiting on that. Contractual, it may be about the same. Communications is going to vary about $30,000. This is due to our events not taking place. Again, it will depend on kind of what happens with COVID, but this is our estimate through the year. Loop Fest did not occur, and our other events have not taken place. Occupancy, that's going to be about, I don't know, we estimate a few $1,000s on that, and that's just due to utilities and savings on utilities for the beginning of the year. The Discovery Center being closed, we are now open partially. Supplies and equipment, I don't foresee too much happening with this because we are spending a lot of money on PPE equipment in lieu of supplies for being closed, and that will continue. It's very expensive, as we all know. So that's it. Down the line, I'm looking at about $400,000 that we could take off if the conditions remain the same. And we'll have a better idea in December. So Chris and I plan on putting together, once we hear from DEC that we get an answer on funding this year, we will put together a contingency budget for our December meeting. By then, we will also receive our report from the New York State Retirement System. So we'll have a good idea what our benefits will come in at. That's our largest payment for the year. So we should have a good idea by the December meeting once we get all answers. Any other questions on that?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question on the conversation about the funding from the state. What is the status of those conversations, and what have you been told this far about your, getting the payment from the appropriation and the Environmental Protection Fund?
So I can answer that, Jess. So we have, so just a quick background. We have a 5-year contract for our EPF appropriation with DEC because our funds flow through DEC. We're in the 5th year of that 5-year contract. On an annual basis, we submit a budget based on the appropriation and the expenses that we build into that. And then it gets approved and it runs through the grants gateway. That has not yet been approved. We have no approved budget through DEC, and here we are midway through September. That said, we've gotten our 2 reimbursements that we've requested. We requested for reimbursement in April. We got that full reimbursement. That was like $671,000+. We submitted the second reimbursement request in July, I believe. Lisa, you can correct me. If I'm wrong, we submitted that in July. We got payment in like first week of September. So we're true. You know, we're pretty fortunate. I think we're fortunate because we have a contract in place, but there's plenty of other agencies out there that do have contracts that are still not getting paid. So that's why we're spending still pretty conservatively.
Thanks, Chris. And when do you expect, because we're in the 5th year of that contract now, when do you expect conversations with the agency to begin about a new contract? Because I'm interested to understand if that will be allowed to move forward.
I asked that question back in July, and the response I got was it's premature given the situation of current contracts and everything going on with COVID. So I'm going on vacation next week, and the Monday that I come back, I'm going to go back and ask the same question.
Okay, that's helpful. I'm asking these questions because I am aware of other NGOs that run programs, not, you know, state commissions, but on the NGO side that run programs out of the EPF, and they were given the go-ahead to grant out funding, but then their contract for running the program itself is stuck. And I don't know if it's stuck at DOB or what, but it's actually delaying the issuing of grants to a number of NGOs around the state. So we're seeing a lot of situations across the EPF where existing contracts are being paid, which is positive, and that's the situation the commission is in currently. But we are seeing a slowdown of new contracting, and I just want to raise that as a concern and ensure that you know, if there are conversations that the board needs to have about ensuring a new contract can be put in place, we're helpful in furthering that work with you, Chris.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that's my larger concern is that new 5-year contract and getting that in place, because that takes a while. It's got to be approved by the Attorney General's office and also the Comptroller, both of which take quite a while. So we will see, and I won't be shy about asking for help if I need it.
Thanks for all the info, Chris.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking a question.
Yeah, I mean, I would think it's going to be a real concern when the contract runs out, both on a timing basis and, you know, responsiveness basis. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, the interesting thing, Will, so let's be hopeful that the EPF remains fully intact. Let's be hopeful, Jessica.
And I will say, Chris, to that end, a number of organizations, including many who were supporting the Bond Act before that was taken off of the ballot as of July, are putting together a letter in support of various sources of environmental funding in New York State, including the EPF. And people can email me for more information about that letter. But I will say that, again, what we've seen the state do in recent years is, and this is kind of what the state has done with other sectors of the budget, they haven't actually made cuts. The governor can't unilaterally cut the budget. It requires an act of the legislature, but they can just not spend. And so we're in a tricky situation where the appropriation, even going forward, could still say 300 million, but the spending could be way lower than that. And the movement of contracts is a serious issue. So, you know, I think the Pine Bush Commission team will need to seek some additional clarity, even if the appropriation remains untouched, about what will actually be able to move forward, in particular, because this commission needs a new contract with the state.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll just say, you know, a number of years ago when our appropriation was about 2 million, we went for a solid at least 3 years in a row because of the cash flow within the state, where even though our appropriate was 2 million, we were only getting 1.5 because the cash just wasn't there. And I know the state has tried hard over the last few years to ramp that back up, but you know, the reality's there. The fortunate thing for the commission is we can continue to spend very, very conservatively and manage and run a program at the bare bones because we have a reserve account and then get reimbursed, but that won't last forever. So it's an important thing to consider. Any other questions about budget and finance?
Okay, I guess we'll move on to the action items. We have 3 of them this meeting. The first,
Hold on, Keith.
yep.
We have investments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. This is the good news. This is the happy part.
This is the happy, exactly.
Okay, on to investments. All 4 funds did great through July. Reserve fund came in at 3.96%, Discovery Center endowment 13.54%, endowment 14%, and the OPEB money market came in at 4.28, giving us a total gain of $655,000 through July. Through August, we had a gain of 761,000, so another 110,000. So good news there.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Sorry for interrupting you prematurely.
Okay.
Moving on to the action items. The first item is the election of officers. And all of the officers that we previously had are going to return in those same positions. I was a little worried about John Brust, but I encouraged him to vote twice, both in person and by mail.
Not surprising, I did not have the votes, but we'll get there.
I don't know, Chris, did you want to add anything on the election of the officers?
Nope. I'm thankful that all 3 are willing to continue in their roles. Just would need a resolution.
Chris, do you want to say anything about what a good job they've been doing, or is that just it?
Yes. It's actually, yeah.
You know, Chris, anything you say now will come across as a little hollow since it's been requested. As John is fishing for compliments.
I'll make a motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We couldn't have a better slate.
The next item is the multi-year contract. Chris, want to go into detail on that?
Sure. Italian Global Services is our custodial, our janitorial services contractor here for the Discovery Center. Because we are giving them a 1-year extension to their annual contract. Anything that turns into a multi-year contract requires board approval under the Public Authorities law. So that's what this is for. So this is an extension for Italian to continue with their janitorial services that would start November 1st and go through October 31st of next year of 2021.
Anybody have any questions about that?
There's no change from the current one?
No, nope,
Okay.
no, nope. They do a good job.
Sounds good to me.
Chris, did you have to have them do more post-COVID?
Yes. So we did have them do more post-COVID, but we pay them separately to do that. So for example, we do this thing called Prevent X 24/7. You spray on hard surfaces. It's a product that originated for use in the restaurant industry. It's not a virusicide or a bactericide. It's more like a scientifically engineered thing where it has these micro spikes, so it kills bacteria. And so
Yeah.
we apply that every 30 days. Actually, it was applied on Wednesday this week to all the hard surfaces. So we pay that separately. Italian does it, but it's not part of this contract. And it's minimal. It's like $200 for each treatment. Everything else they do, they clean every day, which is all part of the reopening plan. The only thing that we do as a staff is in between, since we reopened the center, we do a cleaning with staff, we wipe down things between 12 and 1. So we close, I didn't say that. So we're open Thursday through Sunday, but we close from 12 to 1 to wipe things down and to give staff an opportunity for a lunch break. That's a long answer, but. Question, Harvey?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Steve, you had a question, didn't you?
No, I was just going to make the motion.
Oh,
All right, so let's get to that. Can I have a motion to approve the contract?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
thank you. There's the amendment. Pass this. Like I always say to the staff, when we have staff meetings, look away so you don't get dizzy. Okay. Last resolution is revision to the operating budget. So all this does, we successfully, Tyler Briggs, our fire manager, Neil Gifford, our conservation director, worked again to submit a grant to the Forest Service for the wildfire risk reduction grant program. We were awarded the maximum amount that we could, which is $150,000. And this is specifically for habitat work, which is great because we've been cutting back on our expenses, but this funding will allow us to continue with habitat work, including mowing, stumping, invasive species control, and this will begin in the fall of this year. So if you look at the budget, the only changes that we made are the addition of the $150,000 for the grant and specifically under the contractual line, hiring contractors to do the habitat work. We've been pretty fortunate. We've gotten this grant a number of years in a row. Last year we got it was $125,000, but this year we got $150,000. So that's good. Yep. Okay.
Any questions about that? Okay, can I have a motion to accept the revised budget?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So now we have, I'm sorry, Keith.
Go ahead.
Now we have a presentation from Joel. So I'm looking at Wendy. Do we need to help Joel? I need to stop sharing.
I need all the help I can get. All right.
So this is a presentation that Joel agreed to give. John Brust asked about this back in December of 19 when we were talking about habitat work. And he said, we haven't heard about, hasn't seen the soup to nuts habitat restoration work. Can we see that again? So Joel said, sure. He just didn't know he's going to have to do it virtually.
I thought I was going to do it back in March when I could see you all in person.
Yeah.
So is that working okay, Chris? Is that coming through the way it should?
Sounds great.
Yes.
Everyone can hear me? All right.
Yes.
Good. Okay, well, good to see everybody, kind of. Just want to take this opportunity to sort of update you a little bit on some of the work that's been going on, as well as kind of look back over the last 25 years. Because for those of us who have been around the preserve for that long, we've certainly seen significant change on the landscape. And obviously that's a big part of our mission is basically taking what we had to start with and taking areas that are degraded and restoring them back to quality pine barrens. And that work's been going on continuously for many, many years now. And I know some of the commission member representatives are maybe a little newer, maybe aren't aware of some of the things quite the same way that we presented them in the past. So I just wanted to sort of give that update. So I'll just kind of run through a couple things here, and if you have questions, obviously, feel free to ask as we go. Let's see, so why won't my, all right, I gotta get my screen to forward here somehow. Okay, Wendy, ready for help? Screen won't go forward. Let's see. Sorry about that. It won't. Oh, there, but is this, now they seeing everything? All right, let me try again. There it go. Okay, got it. All right, I think we're in business now. So just for the overview, of course, we all know that the preserve is being protected with a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort because of its rareness, because of the unique plants and animals that are found here in the natural communities that make this place up. And a lot of natural areas are purchased, and then there's not a whole lot done with them. But the pine bush is very different because of the requirement of restoration, but also the requirement of fire. We do a lot of active on-the-ground management here that takes a lot of resources, but has been phenomenally transformative when we look across the landscape now as compared to years ago. And why do we do this? Well, as I mentioned, fire is a key component, and fire suppression left the landscape invaded by various plants that had a negative effect on the overall pine barrens communities. And so we have to go in, bring fire back into the system. We have to remove invasive plants and try to restore as many acres of the remaining barrens as we can, and bring them back to a quality that is healthy for the overall plants and animals that live here. So that's why we're on the ground doing all this work. And it's quite a puzzle. It's something that has taken years of figuring, of changing the way we manage things, tweaking things here and there. But the results have really been really fun to be part of and to watch. And so putting this puzzle together, here's a map just kind of showing what we've done on the landscape. So obviously the pine bush is a very fragmented place with the roads, with development all around it. But we've been able to still successfully work on that landscape. And we've done a lot of black locust removal work. We've done a lot of planting, getting rid of aspen trees that have been a clonal dominant species like black locust. Done a lot of scrub oak thinning, white pine removal, mowing, hardwood thinning, and pitch pine thinning. So there's been a lot going on out there. And sometimes you see it when you drive up and down the roads. You see it right up to the road edge. Other times, a lot of this work is hidden back off of the roads, and unless you get on the trails, you may not have seen some of what's going on. So black locust work. Black locust is a non-native invasive tree. It's primarily a southern species that has localized in the northeast, and including the pine bush. And years ago, we had over 600 acres that were dominated by black locust. And black locust tends to kill just about all the other native pine barrens plants that it invades into, except for a couple that are able to hang on in the understory. So we've been doing a lot of work with that, and black locust has been decreasing, thankfully, over the years. And we've had more and more areas that were dominated by black locust be turned back into more of a pine barrens. For those of you who like big machines, this is sort of an old-fashioned machine called a feller buncher that can just cut a tree off, pick it up, and lay it right down for the next step in removing it from the site. So I thought you might have fun seeing some big machines in action. So I've got more of those of you who enjoy big equipment. It's not, this is heavy duty work we're doing here. It's not going out there with a pair of loppers and clipping a couple of things. We're really totally changing the landscape that has been invaded by these trees. The next step in the process is using excavators. We actually pull all the stumps out of the ground, we bury them on site, cover the stumps back over, and then get the site ready for planting. And this is what the site would look like after the stumping's finished, and we're ready to start the planting process. So we're basically taking it right down to pure sand. As you know, that sand is what is really a key component of this whole system, because the plants and animals that thrive on that kind of landscape and soil types. And so this is what it will look like when we're ready to start the next step in the process. We use equipment.
Yeah, they do.
But some of this work is done in-house, and we use seed drill to plant the sites.
Amazing
Yeah,
that it's in this area.
yeah, with just with the limited resources that we need, we really do, they overcome.
Could you just mute your screen there? Thanks. So this is what the seed drill looks like when it's moving across the sandy areas. It's planting primarily native grasses and wild blue lupin. And then we also scatter other nectar species on the site by hand before we plant it with the seed drill. And those other ones that we scatter are then worked into the soil and come up and do really well. So this is just a little more of a visual to kind of give you a sense of what goes on out there as we restore these locust sites. Then over time, those native grasses and wildflowers start to flourish on these sites. Some of the sites, especially with the wild blue lupin, have been really fun to watch because it's just fields of blue. It's really beautiful in the spring to go out and see some of these areas. If you ever want to go see them, feel free to let us know. We're glad to take you out there for a walk through the lupin patches. Then over time, we will add trees and shrubs if needed. So some of these sites have some remnant pitch pine, remnant oak trees scattered throughout, and they will plant themselves naturally. They will reproduce naturally. They'll spread seed, and we don't have to do a whole lot as far as trees are concerned. Shrubs are a little different. Scrub oak, we're still struggling to some degree to figure out how to get that on the landscape. Bessie Hoffman, who's our preserve botanist and stewardship preserve steward, is doing some research right now to look at ways we can get more scrub oak into some of these sites that are lacking in woody structure. But we have been planting pitch pine seedlings over the years in some of these sites, and as long as the deer don't eat them first, well, we have been pretty successful in getting some pitch pine going. So this is what some of these sites would look like maybe 2 years after we've planted them. So that's quite different from all that open sand we had before, but it's more of a prairie system at this point. It's not really a true pine barrens. It still has a ways to go to get to that point, but this is where it has to start. So basically what we've been doing over the years is basically trying to flip the amount of forested area with the amount of open pine barrens. So originally, we're saying about 65% of the preserved land was in forested variants, and now we're trying to push that the other way so that most of it is pine barrens. 65–70% is pine barrens. We'll still have some forested areas, but they'll be more in some of the wetter sites in the preserve, the areas that can't really be restored to barrens because they're too wet. But this is kind of where we're headed, and we've been working on this, like I said, for 25 years, and it will probably be another 25. Maybe less, who knows, before we wrap this up. I wanted to show this picture because we've also moved on more recently into thinning parts of the preserve that are too dense with pitch pine trees and oak trees. And that's maybe a result of agriculture in the past. It's certainly largely a result of lack of fire with fire suppression. So back in 2014, we started thinning pitch pine trees. And if you look at the map on the right, or the diagram on the right, you'll see that the pine barrens area with little red dots is really what we're aiming for. That's kind of what a pine barren should look like as far as the spacing of the trees, so that most of it's open. It's a fairly open landscape. Just to the south of that there, the yellow dots, that's showing an area with a much higher density of pitch pine trees primarily. And so what we want to do is turn the yellow dot area into something that looks more like the red dot area. Sometimes hard to visualize these things, and particularly on the ground, it can be a little harder to visualize them. But this is something we started doing for a number of years now. We started off on Madison Avenue Extension there over by John Brust's office, and out on the trails, it's really been transformative. It's a different place. So I wanted to give you a little bit of the eye in the sky view, so you could kind of get a better sense of how this is changing. So if you kind of look at this area on the before thinning, and then look at the same area on the after thinning, you can see how the density of trees in here is much different over here. And we were taking out about 3/4 of the pitch pine trees. So we were taking out a substantial number of trees. I gave a little red line around it to help maybe visualize it. That looks like a boomerang or something, but you can, again, can see how much more open this whole landscape is. And the wildlife seems to be responding beautifully to it. The plant life is certainly responding phenomenally because, of course, sunlight is now getting down to the forest floor. One other area to look at, which is kind of interesting, this is again off Madison Avenue Extension. It's just west of the power line, which is right up through here. And this area is right along the edge of the Hunger Kill Ravine. And there are fingers of the ravine that feed into the primary stream. And then if you look over here in 2018, there's those same fingers of the stream, which we didn't thin the trees in those because that's much wetter habitat. But in between, you can see how we opened it up fairly dramatically. So it's kind of a neat way to see the change when you may not be quite as aware of it when you're just walking the trails in the same way. So for those big machine people, here's one more. This is a more modern feller buncher. It can grab a tree up to 14, 16 inches in diameter, some even larger, pick it right up, move it over to where they want it, and lay it down. And in some of these areas, we were thinning not just pitch pine, but we're also taking out red maple, we're taking out aspen, we're taking out locust, some of the other species that, again, have been sort of invading into these areas over time in the absence of fire. This one's a little noisy, just so you can enjoy what it really sounds like out there at times. They're basically processing the tops of the trees. So they'll harvest and use whatever logs they can. And then they use this machine to basically pick up the tops, the parts they can't use, and run them through a chipper. And then the chips are used for various things. They're used for mulch primarily, but there are other markets for the chips. So at least none of the material is wasted. It's all used in some way, shape, or form. And if you ever want to go out there and listen to the noise when this is going on, this is what it sounds like.
Hey, Joel, it's John. I can tell you we lost a lot of productivity at Delaware Engineering as this was going on outside our windows.
Yeah.
I lost you, John. Try again.
I said we lost a lot of productivity in our office while all this work was going on outside our window because it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting to see some of this equipment, and I'm sorry that your business is suffering as a result, but oh well, you have to get better blinds for your windows or something. Here's just one more example. Again, I just love looking at these aerial pictures because they really demonstrate it so well. This is down by Rensselaer Lake, and the Northway is running right along the edge here. The thruway interchange is over here at 24. Here's the fingers of the lake, and you can see, again, just how much this landscape was transformed and opened up. And it's looking really good. I mean, I think, give them another 5 or 10 years, and this is really going to be some high quality pine barrens that we've been able to put together here. But the one benefit of the tree thinning work in a lot of these sites that is not the same as the locust sites is that the understory vegetation, which is primarily pine barrens vegetation, is intact. It's very suppressed because it's been under the trees and so it's not getting much sunlight, but it's intact. So we don't have to do a whole lot here other than once we take the trees out, basically just let the plants respond to the additional light. So what's next on those kind of sites? Well, it's all about Tyler Briggs. and bringing him in with the fire program, getting fire into these sites to maintain them and keep them open. And so they'll be on, approximately a 5-year return interval for prescribed fire. And then after we burn the sites that don't have lupin in them, which is most of these forested sites, do not have any lupin because lupin needs to be able to thrive in full sunlight. So we'll go in after the fire when the site is fairly clean at that point, and we'll use that seed drill again, and we'll plant lupin into these sites all across these landscapes. And then you just have to add time, right? So we can do all we can, but then you just have to let the years go by, and you have to continue mowing, burning, keeping ahead of the invasive plants and allowing these sites to basically turn back into what they were many years ago. So some of them seem to respond faster, others seem to take a little more time. This is looking at that same area off the end of Madison Avenue Extension. Again, from the air, it's really a kind of a cool picture, just showing that much more open landscape. Obviously, if you look in the background there, you can see how much more closed these areas are that are outside the preserve, or actually some of it's inside too, but this area has really been totally changed. And like I said, the wildlife, the plants, the animals are all just responding incredibly well to the pine barrens being put back together. We do have work coming up this fall and winter, and some of it's going to be very visible. So the Discovery Center is right here on New Corner Road, and there's a number of patches of fairly forested area or areas invaded with non-native trees. They're going to be worked on this fall and winter, so you are going to see some big changes right along Route 155, and I think it'll give people a better sense as they enter the preserve area, a better feel for pine barrens versus forest. It'll really help to sort of, I guess, reinforce what they have all around them, what people sometimes see, but sometimes don't because it's hidden behind that wall of trees. So keep your eyes open. You'll be seeing some of those changes. We also have mowing going on. We also have invasive plant treatments happening this fall as well. All of that is contracted work. All of that will be going on right on through December, some of it into January. So that's kind of an overall snapshot of what's kind of been going on, and there'll be more to come in the future of the same sort of work.
Hey, Joel, one comment, and thank you for that presentation. I think as any organization matures, it's easy for that organization to lose its way. And the Pine Bush Preserve Commission has not lost its way, I would suggest, because of all of this active management. And it's just great to see the progress. And for those of us who have been on the board for 20 years, it's great to see the amount of acreage that you've been able to more actively manage. And we have a very large budget, and Chris will mention $150,000 grant or $100,000 grant, and given how much some of the financials increase that Lisa tells us about, it doesn't seem like a lot of money, but it really, in my sense, is that these small grants, 150,000 and more, really contribute to some great things on the ground, and it's just good to see. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, and yeah, I mean that's definitely true. I mean, Tyler's been working hard to get these grants, and like you said, it's sort of filling that gap at times like now when we maybe don't have the money otherwise to sort of continue some of this work. But yeah, and for those of us who, like I said, have been here for years, to really see the changes, it's really fun to be part of that, and all the staff have been doing a great job of making this happen. It's not just me.
And Joel, one more thing, can you speak to the amount of diversity of species that you would find in the more forested areas versus the areas that have been so actively managed?
Yeah, so I mean, just sort of speaking in generalities, so forests generally don't have the diversity or the number of species in them that the pine barrens do. So certainly there are some species which are going to, they won't benefit from us taking the forest down, but there are many more that do benefit. And again, we're focused on restoring the pine barrens. Northern hardwood forests are not rare. So we have them all around the Northeast. So yeah, I mean, you're basically answering your own question in the sense that yes, the forests are less diverse generally, and the barrens are more.
Well, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
You know, what has always impressed me is, in some sense, your stewardship targets have changed through time. You know, I may be putting words in your mouth, but it seems to me that in the 90s, there was this feeling like if we can only get fire on the ground, we burn things, that's going to be sufficient to, you know, restore and maintain. Well, we recognize the invasive species, and so you've had to go in, you know, wholesale and get rid of those. Now you're kind of restoring, you know, the forested habitat, and you know, I guess I'm just trying. I do have an idea. It's like, are those major sort of activities? Is that the extent of them, or are you seeing no? Once we finish those in the next 5 or 10 years, kind of here's the next big stewardship problem that we're going to take on and add to the mix? Or do you feel like those are pretty much all being kind of accounted for at the time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. You know, you're right. We have been, you know, when I first started, you know, the big threat was locust, and that was all we kind of focused on, it seemed. And we learned fairly quickly you can't burn a locust clone; it doesn't prove anything. So there's no use doing that. And so we adjusted, and we started burning in the areas that made sense. Yeah, I mean, what's next? I guess that's a great question. We still have a ways to go, I guess is what I'd say. For the moment, we still have quite a bit of locust to deal with, probably about 300 plus acres of locust, and then we, you know, still have some forested areas thinning in. You know, if you look at the picture, if everyone still has that up, I guess. I mean, some of these buildings may be the next thing to think about. I don't know, but it's. I don't know if anyone else. Chris, do you have any other thoughts on that one? I don't know what else would be our next big target.
I think it's. I wouldn't say that we've finally figured it out, but I think we're so much further along than we were when we started. You know, so I started in '93, Joel started in '94, and Steve, Steve, you started working with us
98. Yeah.
a while ago. But we did, like, you know, the original thought was when the Nature Conservancy wrote the fire management plan back in 1988. The idea is bring fire back into this fire dependent system. We will control our invasive species, particularly black locust, and lupin will explode because it's all seed banked. None of that happened. And we've continued to move along, you know, this trajectory of learning, and you know, it's adaptive management, you know, 101. I think we're just going to continue along removing, you know, forested areas and as we move out of the core and continue to make better connectivity for everything that we have as we move further to the west. And hopefully continue to be able to acquire more land in between. But who knows? In 5 years, maybe we'll say, "Oh, we never thought of that."
Yeah.
But there's things that have happened, like, you know, the whole restoration of black locust.
Yeah.
You know the whole soil chemistry, how it's altered, and there's so many things that are involved in ecosystem management that you think you know what you're doing until you continue to learn more. But that's part of the process.
Yeah, one of the other thoughts just came to mind is that we do have some wetter areas in the preserve, some of the vernal ponds that some work has been done, particularly as relates to invasives. But I think that's something that we probably need to learn a little more about and figure out, because they are a key component of of these areas of Pine Barrens, but that's something else that we'll continue to learn about as we go.
Okay, thanks.
Are there questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Okay, next, we're moving to other business. Chris, I just wanted to ask you if anybody's going out west to fight fires from your shop this year.
No, we haven't been. The only person, because we don't have any fire seasonals, the only person that would go would be Tyler Briggs, our fire manager, and he has not been requested. It sounds like because they sent out a second crew. It sounds like only the people that are going out are DEC staff members at this point.
Well, just be aware, Pete Ennis reached out to me because you might be getting a call.
Okay.
Okay.
Is Tyler on? Oh, good. He'll be happy to have heard that. Tyler's on. He's muted. He's on his phone. Just that, that's probably something that's worth saying. We haven't burned since COVID. We conducted 3 burns in March, around 60 acres, 60 this season, and that was it. And then COVID shut everything down. And Tyler inquires fairly regularly within the department, but DEC is not allowing prescribed fire anywhere in the state at this point. We hope maybe that might change by the later fall, but the one thing that was pointed out to us is, you're talking about setting controlled fires during a respiratory-based pandemic. So that's a valid concern. So that's all I have.
Okay, anybody else have anything they want to add?
Oh, you know what? I do have one more thing. Wendy's pointing at me. Wendy worked with the staff again this year to produce the annual report. She just finished that late last week, and it's on our website. So it's on our website. I'll send that link to everybody. We usually hand those out. Obviously, we can't do that. If you really want a hard copy, we can print one and mail you one, but I'll send you the link. So thanks to Wendy, and thanks to Wendy for helping with the technical aspect of the webinar too. Okay.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Be
Thanks,
safe.
Steve.